We're safe. We're fine. We're almost there. There's the exit. We just have to get there. Please, no more fights. No more random encounters. Yep, that's the sound we were dreading. Today, we're going to be doing a dive into the Final Fantasy I dungeons and ranking them based on how stressful they are, how interesting they are, how important they are to the story, and let's be honest, how much I like them. That's really the only thing that matters here. Final Fantasy I is the first RPG I ever played, and I've got such fond memories of it. So, let's just dive in and get started. The Temple of Fiends. Garland has kidnapped the princess. Please help her. And with that, we're off to the first dungeon in the game. This place is iconic, and it's incredibly well designed to be the first dungeon we encounter. We can take a straightforward path right to Garland and the princess, or we can go exploring to find some nice early game loot, some tough, but not too tough enemy encounters, and find some mysteriously locked doors. It really does do a nice job of introducing us to a bunch of concepts that will be used later on. As for Garland, we all know he's a pushover, but his design is intimidating and the encounter is exactly what a first boss should be. And when we beat him, Sarah will just teleport us back to the castle. A great start to the game, and that's where we're going to place it. Now I wonder what's up with all these bats. The Marsh Cave. This is the place where the fantasy dies. The Marsh Cave is the first true dungeon in the game. Yes, I know we just talked about the Temple of Fiends, but let's be real here. That place is a joke in comparison. The first time you enter this place, you will not be prepared. I can't count the number of times I've wiped here. The Marsh Cave teaches you a valuable lesson. Always be prepared. Bring plenty of heals, pures, and a few tents to save before you enter, and if you make it out. So what's so scary about this place? The most obvious answer is that this is the longest dungeon we've run into at this point, by a large margin. It's got 3 floors, 2 of which give you no real direction, so you just poke around aimlessly. And when you finally reach the chest containing the crown, you're confronted by the first challenge, the wizards, who don't cast spells by the way. These guys hit hard enough to one-hit a mage and have high physical and magic defense, making your spells and your attacks just bounce off them. My path to victory has always been surviving long enough to get off a few casts of lightning too, since even with that high spell resist, they only have 84 HP. We just have to live long enough to get the spells out. Let's hope we get good turn order. On top of all this, the number of wizards you can encounter ranges between 2 and 5. Have bad luck and get 5, and at least one party member will be going down. If you win, you can dust yourself off and pick up your reward, and learn the next trick this place pulls. You have to walk the crowd out of here now, and that's where the real challenge of this place lies. There are very few encounters that are scary on their own, but almost everything you encounter will take a pound of flesh, which will add up over time. Paralysis and poison, 2 of the things that will make the Marsh Cave hell. Paralysis renders your character unable to move in battle, or even unable to run. Luckily, none of the enemies that do paralysis hit hard, and that's good, but it can lead to a fun scenario where all your party members are paralyzed at the same time, leaving you helpless, waiting for your characters to be cured of the effect, and just watching their health go down slowly and slowly each round. The fun thing about paralysis is your character can be cured of it each time they have a turn, but because of turn order, they can be cured of it and then have an enemy hit them and paralyze them, all in the same battle sequence, leaving you just as paralyzed at the start of your turn as you are at the end. Poison is different, because it doesn't actively hamper your characters. It inflicts damage over time, 1 HP per step and 2 HP per turn in battle, which doesn't sound like much, but right now, we don't have a lot of HP, so it adds up fast, and if you have no pures, it can be a race to make it out of the Marsh Cave before you run out of HP. And that sound it makes, that terrible grinding sound. But once we get out of here, we're safe, right? Well, sort of. It's a long run back to town, and if you're not in great shape, you might have to do it a few times. God knows I have. My friends and I used to call this our corpse run. This place teaches you valuable lessons for this game and in life. It has left a mark on my soul, and we have to put it into the legendary tier. Even though it probably doesn't deserve to be there, it's running high on my nostalgia for it. The Northwest Castle. Wait, this place is a dungeon? I didn't think so at first either, but you see those 3 chests, and you see those tiles in front of them? Those are trap tiles. That means if you step on them, you'll get into a battle. And if you can get into battles that aren't boss fights, then yeah, it's a dungeon. It's not much of a dungeon, mind you. There are no random encounters, just 1 floor, and you will never find yourself in fear walking through here. But it's got solid loot. That power staff sells for an absurd amount of money at this point in the game, and we've got the Dark Elf Astos here as a boss encounter. Perhaps the first real boss encounter. No, Garland doesn't count, and the wizards will show up later just as random enemies. Astos has a lovely array of spells, including first turn rub, which usually always hits a character. So yeah, this place is sort of fun for what little of it there is, so it has to go in fine. It would go up higher, but really, this place isn't much of a dungeon to begin with. The Earth Cave. When there's no place left in hell, the dead shall walk the earth. The Earth Cave is the Marsh Cave on steroids. Hell, the wizards are just a normal encounter in here. It's got plenty of those paralyzing and poisoning enemies, and it's got another surprise for us. Cockatrices. They have Stone Touch, which is pretty much instant death. The cure to Stone Touch is a soft potion, which costs 800 gold, which is a lot of money at this point. And you can't even use it in battle, so cockatrices are roaming death squads right now. You know what makes this worse? This place is a maze, so you'll spend lots of time going down the wrong path and backtracking. I've run through this place dozens of times, and I can still go the wrong way. And there's not much of a reward for going the wrong way, because like the Marsh Cave, the loot here is kinda junk, and guess what? We have to dive this place twice. But that's the charm of this place. It has its own little quest line. On our first dive down, we are after a vampire who's been feeding on the residents of Melmond. When we defeat him, we come to a dead end. A solid plate blocks our way, and we can feel evil emanating from the other side. We head out of the cave to track down the rod that we can use to move this plate. Then it's back into the cave to dive further down, which brings us to the Lich. The first fiend. I understand he's the weakest fiend, and less intimidating each time you encounter him, but he's plenty scary the first time around, as he drops spells that hit the whole party. He is undead though, which means we can take him out with fire and harm, and lucky for us, we just got fire 3. I gotta add here, I really love the way the Lich looks. That skeleton emanating out of the fire is exquisite. There's nothing better than downing your first fiend and seeing that orb light up. The maziness of the cave, mixed with its less than great loot, is gonna place this one in good tier. It's just kinda there, especially compared to everything else the game has to offer. The Titan's Tunnel. I've always wanted to fight this damn Titan, and I was convinced when I was younger there must be some way to do so. But sadly, you can't, and there's not much else to this place. The Titan will block your path until you give him a ruby, which he chows down on. Talk about a strong jawline. Should point out that the loot here is rather solid for the amount of effort we put into finding it. I always pick axes over swords if given the chance, so finding a great axe is a plus. But this one is just going to end up in fine, and I know someday I will find a way to fight that Titan. It must be possible. The Castle of Ordeals. I always do this place before the ice cave and the volcano, since it's safer to get here via the ship and canoe than it is via the skies. And the castle is short enough that you can get into only a handful of encounters if you play it right. I do find this place and its gimmick to be a lot of fun. The gimmick is that this place is a maze. As you enter the dungeon, it seems rather empty, except for an old man who tells you to take the crown to the throne to prove your courage. Alright, whatever. And when we touch the throne, we're transported to another room with only pillars. Touching a pillar will transport you to the next area. Okay, makes sense, but some rooms have multiple pillars. Touch the wrong one, and it will take you to the previous room. If you know the path, it's easy to push through. If you don't, it's frustrating and deadly. It can be really stressful when you sort of lose your path and start to forget which pillar you've touched and which pillar you haven't. Once you finish the maze, it's straightforward to the end. Your prize? A rat's tail that, believe it or not, is the proof of courage required to have the Dragon King, Bahamut, promote our characters to new classes. Now let's use this throne to teleport out. Surprise! Zombie dragons that are actually pretty easy to beat. That's another plus. This castle's a good place to grind. I think I've convinced myself to put this thing into the legend tier. Almost. You're not quite there. To the great tier you go. The Ice Cave. It's cold and there are wolves after me. Death takes many forms and we get to see them all here. Whether it's the roaming wolf packs that ambush you and cast frost on the whole party, mummies and geists that can immobilize your party and leave you helpless, cockatrices that can turn you to stone, or sorcerers that have freaking death touch. On top of that, we've got dragons, giants, and peds that will punch you into submission. It even hurts to walk on the ground. I don't even understand why all these enemies are here. It's just a nameless cave. True to its name, this place really does feel like a cave, since there are branching paths that you can take and holes you have to climb through. There can be a bit of trial and error trying to navigate our way through here, but it doesn't take much time to walk through here again, should you get lost. Which brings us to a neat aspect of how this place is designed. Because you have to crawl through a hole to get the floater, you can do this place in 2 phases. One phase to get the loot, and the second to complete the dungeon, or the other way around. The floater is the reward for braving this place, and it unlocks the mighty airship and the rest of the game. My friends and I could never figure out what to do with the floater. This place is wonderful, it's challenging, but it's not too long, so you won't lose too much time if everything goes wrong. It's got a wicked reward for completing it, lots of great loot, and a boss that you can grind levels on later in the game. This might be the best designed one when all is said and done, but I just can't push it into the legendary tier, because there's not enough story or lore reasons here, and it's just not as interesting as Ordeals to me either. The Gurgoo Volcano. The floor is lava. The floor is literally lava. When you step on the lava tiles, you will lose 1 HP of health for all party members, but there will be no random encounters. So it's meant to be a negative, but it really works out as a positive, as most would choose the safety of guaranteed HP loss to, well, the randomness of battle. Running on the lava tiles, when possible, also drastically cuts the time it takes you to run through this place. And running through it you will, since this place is loaded with loot. There's a room in here affectionately called the Volcano Armory. If you've got an armory, then you're loaded with loot, and it's dungeon-specific loot too. A weapon with extra effectiveness against fire? Check, the ice sword does that. Armor that's extra effective against fire? Check, we've got a whole set. This place has got it all, and it ends when you encounter the Fire Fiend Carrie, who's not really in that whole fire thing, and is more likely to just punch you in the face. Which is terrifying, because at this point your characters aren't strong enough to function independently of each other. This place does everything well. Unfortunately, there are places that just do it better. This one sits in Great Tier, above the Temple of Fiends, and below the Ice Cave. The Sunken Shrine. This place is mid, the Kraken is mid, the loot here is mid, and it costs 50,000 gold to even get into the damned place. The mermaids are alright though. This place has never made a major impression on me. I think it suffers from mid-game syndrome, where I've already encountered all the tricks it's gonna pull. Let's not be so negative and talk about what this place does well. It has branching paths, so you'll have to dive into it twice, once to battle the Kraken, more on that guy later, and once to collect a slab that we can use to learn Leffinish from the mermaids. The mermaids are the best part of this place. They exist on a floor with no encounters and a ton of okay loot. The opal armor is good, but there's something better just around the corner. When we talk to the mermaids, they will either expand the lore of the Sea Shrine and the world, or give you an existential crisis about turning into bubbles. Now for the Kraken, what a joke. He does hit hard, but he spends most of his time trying to cover the party in ink, which causes darkness. That effectively does nothing to your characters. This place isn't actively bad or extremely difficult. Either of those would make it significant. It just kind of exists, which is exactly what the Fine Tier represents. No, we can't do that to the mermaids. We have to place this one behind the Earth Cave and good. Have to have some respect for those mermaids. The Waterfall. Rumors of an unidentified flying object bring us to this underwater cave. That's crazy talk. There are no aliens, and there's certainly no robots. Where the Castle of Ordeals was a maze in a fun and unique way, this place is the opposite. It's just a big empty cave with many branching paths that lead to nowhere. There isn't even any loot to be found down these false paths. The only thing that can be found is pain. The saving grace here is that this place is relatively short if you know the correct path. And oh my god, there really is a robot here. What's next? Time travel? This place is lucky it's so short. Otherwise, I might hate it even with all the sci-fi stuff it throws at us. This place is just fine, behind the Titan, cause remember, we're gonna fight that Titan someday. The Mirage Tower. This place looks ancient and unkept, which is exactly how it should look. It's a tower that's been abandoned for ages aside from its robot watchers. The tower is only 3 floors long, but it's absolutely packed with loot. Floors 1 and 2 contain over 20 chests between them, with excellent endgame items, and they are ridiculously easy to access. Which is a good thing, because the enemies you encounter here are scary. You can run into groups of vampires. Groups! It's like when you run into the wizards in the Earth Cave. You guys are bosses. Go away. It's hard to talk too much about this place. It's short, quick, you fight a dragon at the end of it, and then you use a strange cube-like device to teleport into the sky. The Mirage Tower has lots of charm, tons of loot, and I think it's going to push it to the bottom of Great Tier. The Floating Castle. Okay, the Floating Castle was amazing. Let's start with the obvious here. The design and concept here is fabulous. Everything looks so sleek and futuristic. Instead of staircases, you use a transporter to go between floors. There's a window that you can use to look out over the entire world. The doors look to be polished steel, and even the treasure chests have a lustrous look. That's not to mention the massive impacts this place has on the lore of the game, basically confirming everything we've been hearing, that the Leffinish are the survivors of an ancient, technologically superior race that can build robots and castles in the sky. And it really pushes home how strong the Fiends and Tiamat in particular must have been, to defeat these people. It's not fair to the other dungeons to say this place has the best loot in the game. It should, because it's the last dungeon, but the floating castle does have the best loot in the game. All of your final weapons and armor for all of the classes can be found here. And there's even a side quest that gets started here to build the knight's ultimate weapon. It also houses an optional uber boss in the war mech, an ancient war machine built by the Lefanish to defend the castle. On par with chaos and strength, the war mech can appear anywhere on the Bridge of Destiny, a long narrow path that leads us to Tiamat, the final fiend in the game. A dragon with multiple heads, Tiamat stands defiant in front of the Light Warriors. I almost feel bad for him, because after downing 3 of the 4 fiends, it's starting to feel inevitable that we'll succeed. But a thunder, or a poison later, and all of a sudden he's got us hurting. But if we stick with it, we'll eat through his 1000 HP and light the final orb. Now, what did that window say about all 4 forces converging at the Temple of Fiends? This place is full of lore, full of sci-fi and wonder. I absolutely love it when sci-fi elements get trapped in my sword and sorcery games. This is going in the legendary tier, and right at the top for now. The Temple of Fiends Revisited. Let's get controversial. I think this is lazy design. Nowhere inside the Temple of Fiends Revisited do we see any original designs, tile sets, or locations. It reuses the existing fiends for boss fights. It sort of feels like tacked on difficulty, or that they ran out of time to design it. With that out of the way, what an epic way to finish this game. Before you even enter the new area, you will notice that there are 5 bats in the throne room. They've been here since the beginning of the game. These bats are the Sky Warriors, the Lefanish heroes who attempted to defeat Chaos, and this is what your future could entail. Since we've defeated Tiamat, we're now able to communicate with them, and they tell us their story, and after hearing it, we're off to save the day. We have 8 long floors to trudge through. This is the longest dungeon in the game, filled with the strongest enemies the game has, all with death, stone, paralysis, and poison touch. Your only saving grace is that you are very resistant thanks to the armor we found along the way. As we make our way through the temple, we come to a plate similar to what was in the Earth Cave. How do we get past it? We have to play the loot we got for saving Sarah all the way at the start of the game. Long-term storytelling. After breaking through the plates, we start to encounter themed floors. There is a floor based on each of the 4 fiends we visited, with stronger enemies, and at the end of these rooms stand the fiends we've previously defeated, reborn stronger than before, with new, stronger bodies and spells. It's fun to fight the Lich and Carrie and see how much stronger we've become. They're jokes now. The Kraken and Tiamat though? They're still strong. Buried deep, out of the way on the wind floor, is the best weapon in the game, the Sword Masamune, which can be equipped by any member of the team, turning your knight or ninja into a killing machine, or elevating your mages to a level of melee competency, and you're gonna need that extra damage. Standing at the end of the dungeon is Garland? You let your guard down, as he gives you a story about a time loop that I honestly still struggle to understand before he transforms into Chaos and the final battle begins. Chaos is a truly next level enemy. Armed with Nuke and all of the finest damage spells, he will assault your party without mercy. He has 2000 HP, double that of Tiamat the strongest fiend, and has a trick up his sleeve. He knows Cure 4, which is a full heal. If you aren't dealing damage fast enough, he can cast this multiple times, get full HP, and wipe out all of your progress, basically making you start all over again. I still remember the feeling of relief and accomplishment when I first brought down Chaos in the basement of my grandma's house. Watching him slowly fade away was, at the time, my greatest gaming moment. When I started talking about this, I didn't think this one was going to end up in the legendary tier, but I've talked myself into it, and we have to put it above the Marsh Cave, because that's running on pure nostalgia at this point. Now that's it, we've talked about all the dungeons. Now let's take a second to recap our list. Our legendary tier has the Floating Castle, Temple of Fiends Revisited, and the Marsh Cave. The Floating Castle and Temple of Fiends give us a great 1-2 punch right at the end of the game and give us a strong finish, while the Marsh Cave gives us a great start to the game. In Great Tier, we've got Ordeals, Ice Cave, Volcano, the original Temple of Fiends, and the Mirage Tower, which are all solid picks. Earth Cave and Sea Shrine are in the Good Tier, and you could probably make an argument they should be higher. Last on our list are Titan's Tunnel, Waterfall, and the Northwest Castle, all relatively short dungeons. And that's the list. Leave a comment and let me know what you think. Are things in the right order, or am I completely wrong? I'm not really an expert here, I'm just a guy making lists for fun. As always, please leave a like or subscribe if you think the video and I have earned it. And if you got any tier list ideas for me, let me know. There's not a lot I won't rank. Farewell, and thanks for hanging out. Now, as I leave you, let's watch my dreams come true as we fight the Titan. Yay! Take that, Titan. I knew this day would come.